If Iran is willing to walk through the door of opportunity that's presented to them, then I have no doubt that it can open up extraordinary opportunities for Iran and their people. My preference is for peace and diplomacy, and this is one of the reasons why I've sent a message to Congress that now is not the time for us to impose new sanctions.
President Obama this week urging Congress to give peace a chance and hold off on new sanctions against Iran. His plea comes ahead of Monday's implementation of an interim deal reached in November by Tehran, the U.S., and 5 other world powers to curb that country's nuclear program. The full text of that pact has yet to be publicly released, and Iran says it contains a side deal not officially acknowledged by Western leaders. We're back with Dan Henninger, Matt Kaminsky, and Brett Stevens. So, Brett, explain something to me. Why would the administration want to release the text of this?
Yeah, well, this takes you back to the period of Molotov and Ribbentrop and secret pacts and secret negotiations.
Well, why wouldn't they release it?
Well, this is a great question. If they're so confident that this is a good deal for the world, there should be an open diplomacy, just as Woodrow Wilson insisted in, I think, in the 14 points.
Are they afraid what's in it?
I think they might be concerned that it shows just how much the West had to concede in order to get any kind of agreement with the Iranians.
Now, there's this brutal fight behind the scenes between the administration and the Senate, Matt, where 59 senators have signed on to this bill that would offer new sanctions if the final deal negotiations fail. They wouldn't be right now, but it'd be if. Conditional. Right. And the administration is really putting pressure on Democrats not to sign on to this, but 59 senators support it. Why are the senators so why are they, even the senators of the president's own party, doing this?
Because they don't trust President Obama's judgment here, and they're not convinced that he's going to get a good deal with Iran. There's a concern that President Obama, who so badly wants a foreign policy legacy, and that would be peace with Iran, will settle for something which will not stop and dismantle Iran's ability to get a nuclear weapon, which in the long term will be bad for the region and will be bad for U.S. security.
Also, you have to remember the context. You know, Obama would like to take credit for the past round of sanctions, bringing the Iranians to the table.
Yes.
Except that it was the Democrats in 2010 who basically shoved that down the administration's throat against internal administration objections. And by the way, we're not talking about new sanctions. We're talking about new sanctions in the event that these negotiations fail. So when Obama says we don't need new sanctions, that's not really what we're discussing.
The White House is rolling out the rhetorical guns on this and saying basically, if you support this bill, Democrats and of course some Republicans who support it, you're basically supporting war.
Well, it's mainly a rhetorical gun, and I think Matt has put his finger on it. Barack Obama has shown himself to be variable and unpredictable in matters of foreign policy. The biggest example was the red line over chemical weapons in Syria, which abruptly had changed after he went for a walk back in the White House garden. And I think that a lot of these Democrats feel that they just do not believe they know where they are going. Think, Paul, back to the way we used to negotiate arms reduction treaties with the Soviet Union back in the 80s. At that time, you had a clear idea of where we were going, what the plan was, what the goal was, and what the Soviets were doing. This is Barack Obama saying, trust me, I'll take care of it. You don't need to know what's going on. It'll all come out in the end. That is not the way you do high-level arms negotiations.
But the White House also says, Matt, that if this bill passes, it includes terms that the Iranians cannot possibly accept, including zero enrichment and no long-term missile delivery systems for a potential nuclear bomb. So it's basically a poison pill.
They're basically parroting the Iranian line.
But you don't agree with that?
Well, I think if they do walk away, we should know now rather than later on. If the Iranians are not willing to negotiate in good faith, they're saying, well, if you know, then we should. It's better for us to know right now. It's really a false choice that's being presented to Democrats, and they're not buying it. It's either war or it's Obama's version of a peace deal. Iran has to be held accountable and has to be forced to give up its nuclear weapons. That's why we have sanctions, and that's why it's important to keep them in place.
The other objection is that if this passes, then the Americans will get the blame because it'll give the Iranians an excuse to walk away from the talks. The world will blame the United States for the failure, and then the sanctions regime will collapse anyway. So you shouldn't pass this, even if you want the sanctions to be stronger. later on.
Well, I mean, are we engaged in a popularity contest with the Iranians, or are we trying to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon? And that's what's so disconcerting about a lot of the talk with Iran. Now, by the way, there was broad public approval and international approval for strikes on Syria. At least people like Francois Hollande, the Saudis, were willing to go along with it, and that didn't, that international approval didn't mean anything in the end. The objective is to stop Iran from getting within reach of a nuclear weapon. It's not about winning the hearts and minds of the population in Canada or Germany or Japan.
Is it going to pass, Matt, this bill?
I think it's got a very good. I think it will. It comes after the State of the Union speech in February. The Democrats are actually sticking with their support for this bill, and it's close to a veto proof.
Matt?
I don't think it will pass, but it's a useful fight, like the Panama Canal Treaty, to just show how weak the president is.
Dan?
I agree. I don't think it's going to pass. I think the Democrats will step back, but the point has been made.
I think Harry Reid is going to find a way to kill it, Matt. I'm afraid. He always does if it's going to put the president in a veto position. We have to take one more